At 99, Mel Brooks is worth $100 million. But something strange is happening. In 2010, he sold his own Tony Award at auction. People thought it was just for charity, but insiders know better. Now he's giving away props from his movies to museums. He's signed deals worth $20 million for new projects, but the money isn't going where people think. His family is worried. His lawyers are confused. What started as simple charity has become something much bigger. What he's really planning will shock you. Mel Brooks came into the world on June 28, 1926, in a cramped tenement at 515 Powell Street in Brownsville, Brooklyn. The air in that tiny place always felt heavy, because the family lived on only $25 a week, which would be about $400 today. His parents, Kate Brookman and Max Kaminsky, carried the weight of Ukrainian Jewish roots and the Great Depression at the same time, and Mel was the youngest of four brothers. Irving, Lenny, and Bernie were older and bigger, and the small apartment often ran out of space and food. Even so, something inside these early days shaped him. He noticed everything around him. He watched kids playing in the street. He saw how people fought, joked, survived, and carried pain silently. All of it settled inside him and later came out as comedy that felt honest and sharp. Growing up small and sickly was not easy. In Brownsville, kids didn't spare anyone who seemed weaker. Mel got bullied often. His brothers were tougher, but Mel learned to be quick instead. Some days he hid in alleys for hours just to avoid beatings. And yet, he found a strange shield in voices. He copied Irish accents, Italian rhythms, Southern drawls, anything he heard. The moment he spoke like someone else, the teasing stopped. It became a survival trick first, then a habit, then the seed of a future. He later said that imitating people helped him read them. It helped him understand fear, anger, joy, pride. It turned pain into something he could use. When he was 9, something shifted. His uncle took him to the Alvin Theater at 250 West 52nd Street to watch Anything Goes. Ethel Merman stood on stage with a voice so powerful that Mel felt it shake inside him. He walked out of the theater and told his uncle that he would never work in the garment district like the rest of the family. He said he would make people laugh instead. That moment stayed with him like a spark he refused to let die. As a teenager, he learned drums from Buddy Rich, another Brooklyn boy who was already a legend. They became friends, and Buddy taught him discipline, timing, and how to drive rhythm straight into people's chests. By 14, Mel was playing paid gigs at Catskills resorts. At 16, he stepped in for a sick MC and earned $10 a night, which felt like a fortune. That night, he realized people were laughing at his jokes more than they cared about the drumming. For the first time, he felt the crowd lean toward him. That feeling stayed. In January 1944, he graduated from Eastern District High School. For a moment, he wondered about college, the way his brother had. But the war was already calling. Years earlier, he had changed his name to Melvin Brooks because another musician named Max Kaminsky kept creating confusion at gigs. That name change might have seemed small, but it created a clean path for him. He wasn't tangled with anyone else's identity anymore. He was building his own. By 16, he was also playing in smoky clubs in Brooklyn, places filled with noise, sweat, and cheap liquor. He barely made enough to eat, but between drum sets, he cracked jokes, roasted hecklers, and tried new material. One night in 1942, a drunk man tried to shut him down. Mel fired back with a quick roast and sent the man stumbling out. The crowd erupted, and Mel felt something new. Comedy needed rhythm, like drumming. One beat off, and everything died. One beat right, and the whole room lifted. During the day, he worked as a delivery boy in Manhattan's garment district. He hauled bundles for hours, but the real thrill came when he sneaked away to watch vaudeville giants like Al Jolson. Back home, he practiced routines in front of a mirror, copying every flick of the hand and every vocal beat. Those moments created his inner toolbox. He wasn't just dreaming, he was training. At 17, he hit the amateur circuits in Williamsburg. People called him the kid with the loud mouth and louder sticks. He mixed jokes and drum breaks, tossed in insults, and delivered impressions with Yiddish flavor that made people roar. These late-night shows were rough but perfect for him. By the late 1940s, this wild energy shaped a style that no one else had. He blended pain, struggle, noise, and humor into one voice. Coney Island became another school for him. He drummed and joked on the boardwalk for coins. The place was full of hustlers and pickpockets, and fights broke out over anything. Once, a group of teens tried to steal his gear. Mel didn't back down. The argument nearly turned into a fight, and that moment taught him to stay alert and tough. Later, he joked that in Brooklyn you don't get a second chance to duck. That hard edge became part of him. At 18, he took Army IQ tests and scored so high that they sent him to the Army Specialized Training Program at the Virginia Military Institute. He trained in engineering, horsemanship, and even saber work. But the program collapsed after 12 weeks, and he was sent to the front instead. He kept writing jokes during drills. In the middle of war, comedy became a small lifeline. Soon he joined the 1104th Engineer Combat Group and survived the Battle of the Bulge. He cleared mines and kept moving through forests where cold froze fingers and German patrols hunted every sound. In February 1945, he boarded the SS Sea Owl, around 400 soldiers packed into stacked metal bunks. The North Atlantic threw up 30-foot waves, and the ship zigzagged to avoid German U-boats. Mel was seasick for days. He finally bribed a sailor with $20 just to sleep under a lifeboat on deck, where the air felt less suffocating. That 9-day trip felt like a nightmare that kept repeating. Every night brought fear of torpedoes. Every morning brought relief that never lasted long. On the ground in Europe, his unit was scattered in forests during the Battle of the Bulge. They hid in waist-deep snow, fought artillery bursts, and waited for orders that could lead to death within minutes. He watched engineers clear mines that could explode at chest height. He stood 20 yards away as specialists probed the earth with bayonets and whisks. Sometimes he heard a click and a shout, and then a blast. He saw friends die. Once he spotted a cluster of mines and kept his squad back, saving them. Later, he joked that minefields taught him comedic timing because survival depended on knowing exactly when to pause. His unit built Bailey bridges over the Roer and Rhine under sniper fire. They checked buildings for traps, pulled up floorboards, and tried not to trigger explosives. When German propaganda blasted through speakers, Mel grabbed a bullhorn and sang "Toot Toot Tootsie," just to mock them. Humor helped everyone breathe for a moment. After VE Day, he came home in 1946 as a corporal with memories he tried to bury. He found work at Grossinger's Resort, playing drums and telling jokes about the war. The laughter he created on stage was loud, but inside he was still fighting shadows. He spent years in therapy, trying to understand the trauma that followed him. Even so, he kept turning darkness into comedy. Mel Brooks came home from World War II in 1946 with a restlessness that he could not shake, so he took whatever work he could find in the Catskills. Soon, he was at Grossinger's, one of the biggest Borscht Belt resorts in the mountains. He earned $75 a week playing drums, hosting shows, teasing guests, and pulling off wild little stunts to keep people laughing. Some nights the crowd grew so loud that he would dive fully clothed into the giant pool just to push the energy even higher. Those rooms were unpredictable and noisy, yet they sharpened his timing in ways no classroom ever could. He learned how to read a face, shift a joke, steal back a quiet room, and ride a loud one. By the time he left Grossinger's in 1949, he had something solid inside him, something that carried him into the next step. By 1948, he was drifting through New York radio stations, slipping jokes to producers, and trying his hand at stand-up in smoky, cramped clubs. The air was thick, the crowds were rough, and his material often circled back to his time as a minesweeper in the war. One night, he told a joke about mines that landed flat, and the room froze. It felt like everything inside him dropped. But instead of backing off, he pushed forward, tweaked the punchline, and somehow turned silence into laughter. A producer in the back noticed the save and offered him his first paid writing job, $25 a week. It was small money, but a real start, and it kept him going. In 1949, he tried breaking into television by auditioning for Sid Caesar's show called The Admiral Broadway Review. It was live, it was expensive, and it was fast. Brooks walked into the audition and fell to his knees, singing a silly song about how terrible he was. It was odd, it was desperate, but it was honest, and Caesar hired him on the spot. The pay was $50 a week off the books, barely enough to live on, yet it put him inside a writer's room that moved at lightning speed. They worked until they dropped, sometimes going days without sleep, but the thrill of creating something live kept them from slowing down. The show did not last long, but it pushed him into a world where every idea had to be sharper than the last. Soon, he was part of a group of writers that felt almost mythical. Neil Simon, Carl Reiner, Mel Tolkien, and others sat around the same tables, chain-smoking, drinking coffee, and rewriting jokes for hours. Some weeks they stayed awake nearly 72 hours, chasing the perfect rhythm of a sketch. They shaped odd little moments into scenes that felt bigger than simple punchlines. From that pressure grew the strange, layered absurdity that later became Brooks's signature. Those rooms gave birth to ideas that shaped American comedy, and they built friendships that lasted decades. By 1950, he had joined the writing staff of Your Show of Shows. Every Saturday night, the show went live and millions watched. On average, it pulled in around 60 million viewers each week. The writers delivered more than 200 sketches a year, and Brooks had his hands on many of them. The pace was brutal, and the expectations were towering, but he later said those were the happiest creative years of his early career. They pushed boundaries, sneaked in Jewish humor that executives wanted toned down, and reinvented how sketch comedy felt on television. During this period, he wrote a bizarre piece called The Clock. Actors had to freeze in place for hours on live television. Some froze for 6 hours or more. During one rehearsal, Brooks tried doing it himself and collapsed from exhaustion after nearly 4 hours of standing still. The fall became a quick legend in the studio and later inspired his love for physical comedy in film. He learned how far a body can stretch for a laugh. Around the same time, he and Larry Gelbart wrote a sketch called French Underground. It took place in Nazi-occupied France and hid a joke so sneaky that only sharp viewers caught it. The punchline hinted that the Nazis were so foolish, even a mouse could beat them. The censors panicked and almost pulled the entire episode. Brooks and Gelbart had to rewrite the joke at the last minute. That fight became one of the early signs that he would never stop pushing at the edges of what was allowed. In 1954, he earned his first Emmy nomination for writing on Caesar's Hour. Behind the scenes, things were not smooth. He and Woody Allen argued over ideas and eventually had a heated moment in the writers' room where both stood ready to fight until others pulled them apart. The stress of early television sharpened egos and tempers, and the competition for credit felt fierce. Even so, both men walked out of that decade as giants. Then came 1960, when Brooks and Carl Reiner made their first comedy album called The 2,000-Year-Old Man. It was unscripted, chaotic, vulgar, and full of jokes about ancient stories, aging, and sex. Some radio stations refused to play it. Critics were shocked. Yet the record sold more than 1 million copies and became a milestone in comedy. Its rawness set him free in a new way. By 1958, Brooks had stepped away from television. After 8 years of writing, he earned only around $300 per episode, far too little for the workload. Then his Broadway musical Shinbone Alley flopped after only 49 performances in 1957. It hurt both his wallet and his pride. But that blow pushed him to change direction. He realized he needed control over his own work, so he turned toward film and decided to direct his next big idea. In 1967, he pitched The Producers as a wild satire built around Hitler. Studio after studio rejected it, 10 rejections in a row. Finally, Joseph E. Levine agreed to fund it, but limited the budget to $941,000 and insisted that it be shot in 40 days. He also forced the title change from Springtime for Hitler to The Producers. Brooks was so passionate that he chased down Zero Mostel after seeing him in a diner and convinced him to take the role of Max Bialystock. The set was messy, loud, emotional, but it built something unforgettable. The biggest storm arrived with the Springtime for Hitler musical number. The chorus girls dressed in outfits that hinted at gas chambers. Stormtroopers danced in a swastika shape. People at early readings walked out. Levine refused to let the film keep its original title because of it. When the movie premiered, some viewers left the theater in disgust, while others called it brilliant. That moment showed how satire can hit nerves no one expects. Filming brought more chaos. With a tight budget and only 40 days, Brooks pushed hard. Explosions ran long. Fires broke out more than once. The cinematographer Joseph Coffey frustrated him, and Brooks fired him during production for using dull angles. A new crew came in overnight to keep things moving. Stress grew heavy, and Brooks developed insomnia during those weeks. Yet he kept going because the film mattered to him. When The Producers came out in 1968, it won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. Still, the movie earned only $375,524 at the box office against its $941,000 budget. On paper, it lost around $3 million and left Brooks in debt. He had to sell belongings and fight through confusing studio accounting that made him distrust Hollywood finance for years. That failure made funding future films harder, but it also made him fearless. Before all this, in 1965, he had co-created Get Smart with Buck Henry. The show won 7 Emmys, but Brooks quit after the second season because NBC censors kept meddling with jokes. They demanded family-friendly changes like adding a cute dog or a mother figure. Brooks refused. He often said Max had no mother and never had one. When networks softened the show, he walked away. That choice pushed him toward projects where he could protect his own voice. Mel Brooks always loved pushing things further than anyone expected, and that wild spirit showed itself early. When he put together the campfire scene in Blazing Saddles in 1974, he wanted it real. The actors ate actual baked beans and drank beer before filming, so every sound came from the moment itself. They did the gag more than 100 times, but in the end, Brooks used only 12 farts because he tested the timing and felt that 12 was the sweet spot where people laughed the most without feeling sick. He even raised the volume in the final mix so audience laughter wouldn't bury the joke. Warner Brothers executives hated it. They warned him it would offend viewers, but he refused to cut it and called it the funniest moment in movie history. That choice changed comedy forever. And after that, bodily humor became normal in film. Soon after, in the same year, he fought another battle. Hollywood had moved on to full color by 1974, yet Brooks insisted that young Frankenstein had to be in black and white. He wanted it to feel like the old horror films he loved. Universal Studios couldn't believe it. Executives followed him down hallways shouting that the world didn't want black and white anymore, and even yelled that Peru had just gotten color. They tried a trick by saying they would release it in black and white, but wanted him to shoot on color stock so they could re-release it later. He refused. He demanded Agfa black and white film so no one could sneak in any color. That stubborn choice paid off. People loved the Gothic look, and it became one of the most praised parts of the film. Fans still talk about how he risked his career to keep that style alive. While all this was happening, stories spread about Brooks rewriting scenes while under the influence of marijuana. He wanted the set to feel loose and lively, and sometimes he used it to spark fast ideas and quick jokes. The studios didn't like the rumors. They whispered about addiction and even suggested he might become uninsurable. One executive told him straight that he might lose coverage if he ever got arrested. Brooks never admitted to being addicted, yet those whispers almost crushed his future. Even so, both films ended up huge, earning more than $100 million combined. His risk paid off again. When he made Spaceballs in 1987, he needed George Lucas to approve the parody. Lucas said yes, but demanded one strict rule: no merchandise. He worried that Spaceballs toys would look too close to Star Wars action figures and cut into profits that had already earned hundreds of millions by 1987. Because of that ban, the film lost millions in possible toy sales. Princess Vespa scooters, Barf airbags, and all the other silly ideas never reached shelves. Brooks didn't let it slide. He added a line where Yogurt says, "Merchandising is where the real money is." He played Yogurt himself and delivered it like a punch. Years later, Elon Musk named his flamethrower after the same joke, the Boring Company flamethrower, and it sold out instantly. Lucas's ban still stands, and Spaceballs remains one of the only big films with almost no official action figures. Joan Rivers joined Spaceballs as the voice of Dot Matrix. She improvised many of her lines and quirky voice glitches, and her timing kept the character sharp. The set wasn't always safe, though. A practical explosion went wrong and burned Rick Moranis' wig so badly that he needed medical attention. He was rushed to the hospital, and production stopped for a while. Brooks later said the accident pushed his insurance costs up by $50,000, which was a lot for a comedy at the time. The chaos added to the film's legend. Dot Matrix became one of Rivers' most beloved roles, and that hospital moment still comes up when people talk about wild comedy shoots. Spaceballs didn't stay simple for long. It started with a modest budget, but costs rose until the total hit $22.7 million. That was more than double what the first Star Wars cost, and far above Blazing Saddles. Most of the budget went into practical effects. Ludicrous speed alone required building detailed models and letting actors ad-lib the whole thing. MGM executives panicked. They were upset about money, and even more upset when Brooks included the line about combing the desert. Some found it offensive and pushed for changes. They threatened to shut the film down unless he made edits. He fought back and argued it was satire. Despite the battles, Spaceballs survived and grew into a cult classic. The cost and tension behind the scenes became part of its story. Even tiny jokes carried huge fallout. When Brooks voiced yogurt, the shop sign and the name stirred trouble after the release. Several real yogurt companies filed lawsuits, saying the film confused customers. The lawsuits were all dismissed, but they showed how easily parody could cross into someone else's territory. The character still became iconic, loved by fans and copied across pop culture. Those legal fights only made the story funnier. Brooks wasn't afraid of bold ideas in his earlier work either. In History of the World Part 1 in 1981, he created the Jews in Space sketch. It looked like a playful spin on Star Trek, with ships shaped like Stars of David and Hebrew letters glowing in space. The joke about Jewish survival was bold enough that the sketch was banned in 10 countries, including Germany and Israel. Some actors quit because they felt the humor went too far, and Brooks had to reshoot scenes at his own expense. The controversy turned the sketch into a legend, and today people see it as one of the bravest moments in comedy. His energy carried into theater. When he adapted The Producers for Broadway in 2001 with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, the rehearsals felt like a prank war. Actors sneaked on stage and swapped props, taped chairs shut, or replaced script pages with nonsense. It created a feeling that anything could happen, which helped the show explode with life. That same energy helped it win 12 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, breaking records and proving that a wild rehearsal room could turn into something unforgettable. The show wasn't always safe from trouble, though. One famous moment came from the song Keep It Gay. Audiences at previews were so shocked by the innuendo that some walked out before the end. Investors panicked and threatened to pull their money. Brooks had to rewrite lines and fix staging during the previews themselves. He ended up spending $2 million on changes that kept the show alive. The toned-down version held onto its satire and saved the production, creating a story theater fans still talk about. When The Producers moved to London in 2004, it faced danger not from audiences, but from the real world. IRA bombing scares forced the cast and crew into emergency protocols during several shows. The team kept performing even during high-alert nights. Security grew tighter every evening. Nathan Lane led the cast and often received standing ovations for pushing through such intense situations. The resilience added another layer to the show's legacy. Brooks tried to repeat his success with the Young Frankenstein musical in 2007. It cost $14 million to mount, but never connected with audiences the same way. Even though it won the Outer Critics Circle Award for score, it lost $15 million by the time it closed. Critics called it too silly. Brooks defended his choices and said improvisation kept the show alive. The loss shocked the theater world and reminded everyone that even legends face hard moments. He had achieved EGOT status back in 2001, becoming one of only 21 people to hold an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. Yet in 2010, he shocked fans by auctioning off one of his Tony Awards for charity because of personal financial issues. It raised a large amount of money and showed how open he was about fame and wealth. It became one of the strangest and yet most meaningful moves in Broadway history. His personal life carried its own storms. Brooks married Anne Bancroft in 1964, 2 years after divorcing Florence Baum, with whom he had 3 children. Rumors in the 1970s suggested affairs during the filming of Young Frankenstein and Silent Movie. One story tells how Brooks publicly thanked actor Tim Matheson for not sleeping with Bancroft during Silent Movie. These rumors strained their marriage and reportedly brought them close to divorce, yet they stayed together until Bancroft's death from uterine cancer in 2005. Even now, he refuses to slow down. At 99 in 2025, With a net worth of around $100 million, mostly from long-term residuals, he announced Spaceballs 2 and a new TV series called Very Young Frankenstein. FX approved the pilot and brought in Taika Waititi to direct, along with Stefani Robinson as showrunner. The deals are worth about $20 million and have become some of the most expensive comedy projects ever created by someone in their 90s. Brooks joked that fans begged for sequels and he wanted to give them something better. He never forgot charity either. In 2010, he headlined a fundraiser for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and raised $1 million in a single night. Tickets cost between $100 and $250, and VIP guests shared champagne and dessert with him. He performed improvised Hitler jokes on stage and kept the room laughing for hours. Later, he donated props from the producers and other films to museums as part of his estate planning. In 2018, he faced a major health scare when he needed emergency pacemaker surgery. The risks were serious, yet he recovered and continued to work. He voiced roles in the Hotel Transylvania films until 2022. He later said he regretted not making more daring movies after the 1990s because censorship kept tightening. Comedy was his refuge, and he wished he could have pushed even harder. When he accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award at Guildhall in 2021, he surprised the audience by opening up about the roots of his satire. He spoke about serving in World War II and the trauma of helping liberate concentration camps. It gave people a new way to understand him. Behind the jokes and the bold humor stood someone who had seen darkness and used laughter to fight it.